Please receive our brother with a warm round of applause as I greet you in peace, Ilya Rashad Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. In the most holy name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the one God to whom all holy praise is due, we thank Allah for his coming, as the scriptures teach that God would one day come, not as a spirit nor as a spook, but in the form of a human being. And we should ask ourselves, as God is going to come, he's going to have to come in some type of contraption, some type of vehicle, some type of craft that will allow him to come from one place to the other. That's right. So we thank him for his coming and raising in our midst the man whom we in the Nation of Islam would argue with the world and declare is not just the messenger of God, but the Messiah that the world has been awaiting. That's right. That man we speak of is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. But since this world would never teach us adequately about such a beautiful and magnificent man, God has continuously shared us with his spirit and his love. For Elijah went away in 1975, much like the Elijah of your Bible, who went away on a whirlwind, on a fiery chariot, as these scriptures call it. But before leaving, he left somebody with a double portion of his spirit. And that man among us today is the man whom the world is going to have to bear witness to. The man who is the only so-called religious or spiritual leader who adamantly and consistently has taught us about what they call UFOs. But he has a much better understanding of what it is, and that man I speak of is none other than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Beloved brothers and sisters, again, let me greet you with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Have a very, very, very phenomenal subject that we want to tackle today. We want to tackle this difficult yet very phenomenal subject dealing with what, again, they call UFOs. The first part of this subject, the first half, we want to deal a whole lot with facts. We want to deal a lot with statistics. We want to deal a lot with information. So I may try to breeze through it, but I know it's a whole lot. The second part, we want to deal a lot with the prophecies, with the scriptures. Now with this subject, right, the reality of the wheels, this whole UFO phenomenon, as far as the Nation of Islam goes, we don't speak on this subject as speculators. In fact, we speak on this subject with an authority because we know what they call unidentified. That information has been revealed to us and to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad since the 1930s. So we don't speak as those who are trying to, just appease you and convince you and what if these things. No. We speak with authority on this subject matter. In fact, I noticed that in most of their ufological studies, which is now a bona fide study of UFOs, they always exclude the Nation of Islam. So we want to challenge the naysayers. We want to challenge the soothsayers. We want to challenge the world of science and religion on this issue. So I'm going to ask you as critical thinkers, if you would be kind enough to take some notes, because I have a lot of valuable information on here. So if you can take notes, that would be even better for your own research and verification. Some of us may ask, why would you teach a subject like this at a mosque in some religious setting? Shouldn't that be something that's done at school or in some type of academic setting? Well, in the Nation of Islam, we don't believe that science should conflict with our faith. In fact, in the Nation of Islam, unlike most religions, we challenge the world of science. Our teaching is a teaching that can withstand scientific scrutiny. And we will even go as far as to say this: if your religion cannot withstand scientific scrutiny, if your religion cannot uphold and substantiate and explain this type of phenomenon, then you may really want to reconsider your religion. We want to make a clear distinction between what's real and what you see in Hollywood. We're not here to come telling you about some green alien saying, take me to your leader. None of that. It's not that kind of party right here. But what we are doing in our research, we are using primary resources, which are the most reliable sources. Minister Farrakhan is real. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is real. Presidents, astronauts, human beings, the Nation of Islam, these are real people. So we're not dealing with these great movies that are based on some reality, but twisted to fit Hollywood's purpose. All right? We're not dealing with Independence Day and or V, Men in Black. We're not using creative imagination. So we want to demystify this subject. And we should maybe ask ourselves, why is it that the world-renowned physicist, Mr. Stephen Hawking, I don't know if you're familiar with him, why is he publishing information about UFOs and publishing his concerns about UFOs? Little things that we ought to ask ourselves. But we want to get to the source of this matter. You see, before there was ever anything called flying saucers, before anybody ever started talking about any kind of UFOs or saucer-like crafts, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad confounded a world with a special kind of teaching, a special truth, and a special wisdom that was unknown to this world. And the most peculiar thing about it is that he says, and his claim is that he got it directly from God in person. This man, see, you can't just shut him out. This man said that for 3.5 years, the spirit, force, power, wisdom, and essence of God was in person and taught him for 3.5 years. Taught him things this world could never know. And to prove it, he taught things since the 30s that scientists, decades later, are finding out to be true. He taught us about the origin of people. Yes, sir. Where black folks come from. Where white folks come from. But decades later, with their research, everything he said has been validated. That's right. Of course, they'll never say Elijah Muhammad taught us this, but their science verifies it nonetheless. Here's a man who taught us about the planets. That's right. And what you call high astronomical science. In the 30s, from a man with a 4th grade education now. He told us what planets are inhabited, what planets aren't. That's right. He told us about the moon and how the moon got to where it is. That's right. And how the moon was formulated. But in 1975, NASA scientists have took what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said and used it as their primary theory of how the moon was formed. Right. It is obvious that the intelligence that taught Elijah Muhammad was and is an intelligence far superior to anything in this world. That's right. Since this is true, and it is, then what about this teaching that Elijah Muhammad taught us about this mother plane and these wheels, these crafts that are now, decades later, being referred to as UFOs? But we want to let you know that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the man that was given first-hand knowledge of this information. Not only did he get first-hand knowledge, but he got first-hand knowledge and information from the one responsible for the orchestration and creation of these wheels. Which means he is the authority on this subject matter. But you'll notice how they always deliberately leave him and the Nation of Islam out of their ufological studies, out of their ufological research, as we'll see later on. So we have to ask, and you have to ask yourself in a critical, analytical fashion, do these planes exist? If not, then we can dismiss everything Elijah Muhammad, Louis Farrakhan, and the Nation of Islam teaches as just crazy, them some nuts down there. We just shouldn't have to listen to anything that they say or do. We can totally dismiss the Nation of Islam altogether if these planes do not exist. Come on. That's right. However, make it plain. However, if they do exist, and all the world has witnessed what they call these sightings, then they would have to give credit to the man that started it all. So if you don't want to give credit to the one that started it all, which would mean that everything he said must be true concerning God as well. So since we can't make it seem like these things are real, we have to cover it up.
That's what they do.
And make it seem like it's all Hollywood. Make it seem like it's some green aliens telling you, take you to their leader. Let's just give a brief synopsis as a general idea of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught about these planes. He told us that the purpose of this mother wheel, which is the huge, gigantic one, and these baby planes, was divinely made to protect and usher in a new world of righteousness and also to destroy the present world of wickedness. So these crafts have two natures. He taught us where they were built. It wasn't built out of space. No, right here on this earth, in Japan, the Nipponese Islands. And if you study geographically the geography of the Nipponese Islands, they are formed in such a way where you will get lost, even with your radar. So it's a very subtle, hard to find, hard to move around place. It would be a fitting position to construct this clandestine type of vehicle, and the world wouldn't know what was going on. The time that it took to construct the mother wheel in particular was from about 1909 to 1929. It didn't take off, just like rockets take off. It didn't actually take off from the Earth's atmosphere until 1929. Now remember, this is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, that was taught to him before all this other stuff came about. He taught us how it was manufactured and by who. First of all, it was orchestrated by God in person, but God didn't just sit up there and build it himself. But approximately 25,000 of the most brilliant minds and scientists from this earth, a clandestine body of men, were used in the orchestration of this mother wheel. Now, all of them did not know what the whole purpose of what they were building were. Many of them just had their own responsibilities, but they didn't know what the ultimate goal would ultimately be. The size of this mother plane, 1/2 mile by 1/2 mile, approximately a mile straight through. He told us about its maneuverability, what all it can do. And this is verified in all of these later sightings. He said that they can move at speeds of 9,000 miles per hour. That's unbeknown to this world. This is why whenever you see the sightings, when they're not just floating, they're moving at speeds unbeknown to this world.
Come on.
Its occupants, no green men, let me make that straight.
Come on.
No aliens.
ET not on.
This is realistic. Human beings. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said they look just like you and me. Scientists possessing knowledge unbeknown to this world. These are the same type of scientists that you read about in the Bible that's also referred to as angels, which are human beings, but they are human beings possessing wisdom and certain powers and intelligence far superior to this world, because they act at the behest of God himself. That's what the book says. Be careful. You never know who you entertain. It might be one of the evangelists or scientists. So it has an affiliation now. If you see rockets go up, you know what affiliation. It must be NASA. Or it must be somebody else. Maybe it's Russia putting a pile up there. Where the affiliation with these crafts, particularly the mother plane and these, what they all others call baby planes, are affiliated with the Nation of Islam.
That's right.
And if it's affiliated with the Nation of Islam, it is also affiliated with the righteous of the earth, the original people. It is accompanied by 1,500 smaller baby planes. You have this one great mother wheel or mother plane or mothership, as it's sometimes called, but it's accompanied by 1,500 smaller baby planes. These are what you hear as flying saucers and UFOs that are seen quite frequently. Now, many may look at this as being quite skeptical. Come on now, brother. Now, look, I believe all that Nation of Islam stuff y'all talk, but come on, this is a little out there, brother. Well, let's see. Now, obviously, the American government knows about these crafts. Witnessing on a regular basis. The government knows about it. The question is, why don't you?
Go ahead.
That's because when it comes to realistic information about UFOs, I mean realistic, I'm not talking about people drunk claiming they saw something, but realistic UFO information is considered above top secret by the American government. And there's a reason for that. Because they don't want you to know that there is a higher intelligence, a much higher power than this world. They don't want you to think that this world, American government, white folks in general, are the most powerful thing you can think of.
Come on. Come on.
And the scripture refers to them as being the God of this world.
That's right.
But they're not God over the God.
Come on.
So there is a power greater than the power of this world. And if the information was released that, okay, these things are not controlled by us, then it would prove that there's a power beyond the power of the American government, a power beyond the power of white folks. Now, other countries outside of America have literally opened their UFO files and their UFO studies. Why hadn't America done so? Mexico, Italy. Obviously, somebody doesn't want you to know something. In the lessons of the Nation of Islam, these people that don't want you to know something are called the 10%. And the question is asked, who is this 10%? The rich, the slave makers of the poor, who teach the poor lies to believe that the almighty, true and living God is a spook and cannot be seen by the physical eye.
Come on.
These 10% are also known as the bloodsuckers of the poor. Now look, let's look at some statistical data. Everybody okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, now we're going to be very analytical today.
Come on.
Let's look at some statistical data over the years.
Go ahead, Sean.
Now, according to Newsweek, some years ago, 49% of the American people believe the government is concealing information about UFOs. That's Newsweek. You all read Newsweek. Now, as of a little over a year ago, in 2008, a third of Americans believe in UFOs. That's 34% of the American people. You know how much 34% is? 34% of 400 million people in America equals about 136 million people who believe in UFOs. This is just the American people now.
Come on.
Oh, are all 136 million of these people just nuts? Let's go a little further. 14% of Americans say they have sighted a UFO.
Get a number.
This is in a poll by the AP, Associated Press poll. 14% of the American people say they have sighted. Now, if you take 14% of 400 million people in America, that averages out to about 56 million people in America who have sighted what you call UFOs.
Come on.
Now, is it just coincidental or is it just hearsay that 56 million people in America have all seen virtually the same doggone thing described in the same manner? Look at the facts, people. Let's analyze this thing.
Go ahead. Come on.
56 million?
All of them wrong, huh?
What is the testimony and weight of the testimony of 56 million witnesses in a court of law?
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead.
So we have to look at these statistics and facts and actually analyze them and take them all into consideration. Now, I really want you to start taking notes on some of this because I have a lot of very well-known events, well-known historical events and figures that I encourage you, no, I challenge you to look up, to verify, or argue against. One of the first is this right here.
Go ahead.
It's called the Battle of Los Angeles.
It's a fact.
Now, just by show of hands, you can be honest, who's heard of this, the Battle of Los Angeles? Very few hands. I wonder why. This is a very well-known historical event. But before this whole spaceship phenomenon hit major public concerns, the mothership that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about and some of these baby planes were already witnessed by the government's military as early as 1942. Y'all gonna research this? All right. The sighting rendered perhaps the first known direct confrontation with the U.S. military and these planes. It was in 1942, while hundreds of California residents were disturbed by sounds and artillery because the wheel and some of the smaller wheels were spotted 120 miles off the coast of California and over Los Angeles. Around 3 a.m. in the morning on February 25th, 1942. Can I hear y'all say February 25th? A very important date in the history of what we're dealing with. February 25th, 1942, the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade's anti-aircraft artillery began firing batteries or rounds. There was about 12 to 15 pound rounds at these crafts. According to all the reports, the big craft stayed right there. They shot everything at it and it didn't move. The smaller crafts were dodging the actual missiles and artillery. Big thing.
February 25th marks an anniversary that few remember and some refuse to forget. In 1942, an unidentified object was seen hovering over the California coast. The military, poised to defend the coast from a foreign invasion, took aim and fired. The event, called the Battle of Los Angeles, made headlines. What was in the sky and where did it go? Filmmaker and UFO researcher Jose Escamilla highlights the events of that night.
What happened at 2 in the morning, some objects entered into our airspace. One of them hovered right over Santa Monica and Culver City. Some described it as a round, dome-shaped object that was about 100 feet diameter. Some of them said it was a little smaller. But the unique thing about it is the military, the Army, started firing at this thing for about an hour, hour and a half, but they could not bring the object down.
Within 24 hours, the Department of War sent a memo to the president detailing the incident as possibly unidentified airplanes flying at various speeds and declaring the investigation ongoing. But that came to an abrupt end when the Army declared the flying object a weather balloon, sparking theories of a government cover-up.
If they can't bring down a weather balloon with over 1,500 rounds of anti-aircraft shrapnel, 12 pounds weaponry, what are they going to do against a real enemy target? That's what they decided. What do? Do we tell the American and the world public there is something among us that we cannot bring down, we cannot control, we don't know where they're from, and we don't know what they're doing here? No, they didn't want to say that. So the next best thing to do was to just officially deny their existence. That's when the first official denial on UFOs started.
The military shot all these rounds of anti-aircraft artillery, and it couldn't do anything with that wheel or the baby planes. But let's look at it. It was all in the press the next day. It was in the newspapers, and what you see on that picture are actually some of the lights being shined up into the craft, which you can't see that much, and those little dots of light are actually where the missiles hit, but it didn't do anything to this plane. But in the newspapers, they said all this artillery that was fired, and it had to come back down somewhere. That's right. So it came back down on the residents' home, on their cars, messing up their cars, but it was a big cover-up. The next day, on February 26, in 1942, Chief of Staff General George Marshall sent President Franklin D. Roosevelt a memorandum on this event, which stated that the unidentified airplanes, other than American Army and Navy planes, were probably over Los Angeles and were fired on by elements of the 37th California Brigade. Now, this is what they had to do because they have to explain this now. How do you explain this to the American people? How do you explain this to the president after we witnessed something that we couldn't do anything to? They tried to say it was a weather balloon. You mean you're going to fire all these thousands of pounds of anti-aircraft artillery on a weather balloon and you can't bring that down? So now America, the military, they don't know what to do. So he sends them a memo to the president. The Chief of Staff Marshal's memo to Roosevelt concluded that the unidentified airplanes may have been from commercial sources operated by enemy agents for the purpose of spreading alarm. But see, President Roosevelt knew something. President Roosevelt knew something. He knew that there was a man in America talking about these things. A man that they thought or tried to make seem was super crazy. So just 3 months after the Battle of Los Angeles, less than 3 months, President Roosevelt ordered the arrest of Elijah Muhammad. Why are you going to arrest Elijah Muhammad? Well, Elijah Muhammad says he's from a power that you don't control. Elijah Muhammad was the only one talking about these craft, this wheel. And since everything he taught added directly up to what they encountered over Los Angeles, President Roosevelt, by executive order, ordered the arrest of a U.S. citizen, Elijah Muhammad. Why would a president order the arrest of somebody that's considered a nut? Look, you don't offer an executive order for people that's crazy.